welcome to the Barbarian Investor Show. I'm Adam Jason, and today I'm joined by Alastair Mordey, the co-founder of Elevate Health. Welcome, Alastair.
Good morning.
It's great to have you here, and before we jump into Elevate and what you guys are doing, can you first give us a bit of background on yourself and your experience?
Well, I've been working in behavioural health for nearly 2 decades, specifically in addiction. I started out here in London in the public sector. Then in 2009, I co-founded a private rehab called The Cabin in Thailand, which grew to 120 beds and became probably the largest addiction-specific behavioural healthcare provider in the Asia-Pacific region, also with large outpatient clinics in Sydney, Melbourne, Bangkok, Singapore and Hong Kong.
Wow, okay, so quite a lot of experience there. And so your understanding of behavioural therapy and rehabilitation, how does that kind of feed into Elevate Health? And can you, I guess, give us an overview of what Elevate Health is aiming to achieve?
Well, what we noticed when we were running addiction treatment centres is that whilst there's a small segment of the population, perhaps 2, 3, 4%, who are seriously addicted and are in need of residential treatment or intensive outpatient treatment, there are many more people who are suffering with what we might call compulsive behaviours, behavioural health problems or unhealthy behaviours like smoking, overeating of highly palatable but very unhealthy foods, large amounts of inactivity, and increasingly driving that excessive use of internet and smartphones, etc. So we thought to ourselves that there must be a tech solution for this. So Elevate Health is a plug-in-and-play payment platform that works with decentralized and centralized apps. 2 key stakeholders, one, large organizations that wish to see behavioral change over a large population, and secondly, that population itself. So the first stakeholder buy the Elevate Health token and reward the service users with that token upon them reaching certain behavioral changes. So for example, an insurer might incentivize a policyholder to lead a healthier lifestyle and reward them with that token.
So there's benefits for insurance companies, for governments. On the kind of science aspect of it, I guess, and the logic of, you know, giving up something like smoking or something that's addictive, like, you know, highly calorific foods. What's the actual science behind, you know, replacing that with a payment, or some might say rewarding bad behaviours if you know, you're giving people money for continuing to do these things?
Yeah, I mean, what we've learned is that people don't just change their behaviour because of a negative health consequence that's looming. They tend to change their behaviour because they're incentivised in some way. So if you look at the neurology of what's going on, or the neuroscience behind it, highly calorific food, searching the internet, smoking, obviously drinking alcohol. These are all highly rewarding behaviours. In fact, they're ancient primate behaviours, which are survival based, and they're very enjoyable, largely speaking. And so people don't want to just give them up. They tend to give them up in response to another reward, which is better and healthier long term. And so obviously money is neutral in that sense. It can be a very good thing to have in your life and needn't be misused. So we know that all addictions and all compulsive behaviours are driven by the brain's reward system, and that people tend to get better by rewarding themselves in other ways. So that's the neuroscience behind it. And if you look at it, during the 1980s and 90s, we had large stop smoking public health campaigns, which appear to have worked, apart from they kind of didn't, because people have started eating a lot more, or eating very calorific foods. So what they're doing is they're replacing their dopamine, effectively, that they lost through stopping smoking. So an incentive is required to motivate people to change, and the science bears this out. For example, pregnant mothers are 3 times more likely to stop smoking if they're cash incentivized. And this is something that we've seen across the studies.
And it seems to be a kind of modern phenomenon as well, is that, you know, we're getting unhealthier as we become more, you know, involved in technology and kind of isolated, and we're not outdoors as much. So this is kind of going to stimulate people, you know, to hopefully get outdoors in a way and get moving again.
Yes, for example, one of the use cases that we have going on is an MOU with the Dubai government to increase physical activity.
Okay.
So if you think diabetes is on the rise, most of the global top 10 causes of death, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, lower respiratory illnesses, cancers of the lungs, bronchi, trachea, are all driven by these unhealthy behaviours or lifestyle illnesses. They're effectively lifestyle illnesses. So the government will plug in to our platform what is effectively a stepometer, and then we make the payments. So over a long time period, we know that increased activity will lower type 2 diabetes. Thus, that National Health Service makes massive savings over a long time period.
And I mean, the figures are quite astronomical. Can you just give us an example of the cost of diabetes or smoking, for example, to certain states?
Yes, roughly speaking, $1 trillion across the field for treating smoking globally, diabetes globally, and also lost productivity in the US alone per year, $1 trillion for people messing around on social media when they're very highly skilled and could be putting a lot more into their employers.
Yeah, and a remarkable thing I read recently, a remarkable fact, is that more people die now of diabetes than of starvation, which, if you think about, the development of civilization is quite incredible. So just to focus on the blockchain and kind of crypto aspect of it, so you said that there's going to be centralized and decentralized apps that can kind of plug in to the Elevate app. And what's the theory behind the use of cryptocurrency for the payment of these rewards instead of kind of traditional, bank transfers?
Well, two things. I mean, there are obviously companies that are rewarding people for healthy behaviours, but they tend to focus on the top 20% most healthy people. For example, people who are already into bodybuilding and running and so on, and then incentivise them with very uninspiring treats like free popcorn. The fact is money is much more incentivising, especially for some people. And secondly, it would have been administratively virtually impossible to run large schemes like this before the advent of blockchain. So now we can make tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of instantaneous transactions, which just would have been impossible in the previous bank-to-bank system.
Okay, well, look, I look forward very much to earning some money from your app for improving my health, and thanks very much. We'll keep an eye on the development, and thank you for coming in today.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers, Alastair.